first grew curious about the paranormal? Dare you dig deeper? You are listening to House of Asher.
And I want to welcome everybody back to House of Asher. I'm glad to see that we've made it through the week and into the weekend. And in the distance, you can hear the old church bells ringing. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. That's one of the things about living in downtown, as big as our little metropolitan city of Princeton is. You're not too far within ear's reach of the church bells or the train tracks, one or the other. So anyway, this is episode 65, and again, I welcome you guys, and I appreciate you being here. It's not been that long ago, and I hope these church bells are coming, because this is very atmospheric for what I'm talking about. It wasn't very long ago. There was a lot, well, obviously Halloween, and talking about Bela Lugosi's birthday, and all the different stuff, and all the different movies it's connected with. And, as you know, I'm a very big Universal nut, and grew up on all the Hammer films, and all that stuff. And it's that type of atmospheric elements have always been a part of my life. And through the miracle of Facebook and other formats, I've made friends that have shared the same sort of interest. And my next guest is actually someone I'd spoke to for a little while, and we've been kind of talking back and forth about this and that, and it's like, man, I'd like to have you on, and it's back and forth. You know, people have lives, and people get caught up, and it's just the nature of it. But I'm so lucky and thankful to have on our next guest, Queen Emily, and I would like to welcome you to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Awesome. And please do the proper title, because I'm going to butcher it.
It's a long one. So my proper title is Queen Emilia Belligambi Osset Lor Sahaja, and I am the queen or regent of the Vampire Court of the Live Oak.
Yeah, that would be hard to put on a business card, I think.
It is. It's very, very, very long. So it's one of those things that I don't really, I don't say, hi, this is who I am. It's just Emily, and then just leave it at that.
We know that's the thing. You talk to different people, because like I said, different cultures have very long titles, depending on what region of the world they're from and whatnot. And, I do have to ask, when and how did you come to be interested in all this? Obviously, I knew you kind of grew up being a big Bela Lugosi fan, and kind of growing up under that sort of umbrella of horror movies and things like that as I did, but I never really made a jump into where you're at. I always was more of a watcher than a doer on that. I think I lived kind of voraciously and vicariously through people like yourselves.
Well, it started when I was a child. I was, like you said, very, very interested in the dark subcultures. I was a goth kid at school. I was actually held the nickname of the goth princess back when, Evanescence and stuff was very popular. But to be quite honest, when it comes to the vampire community, I didn't quite realize them until probably about my early 20s. The vampire community being what it is people who identify solely as being alive vampires, human vampires, people who believe that they are vampires. And I just thought I was a weird child, to be quite honest. I just thought I was strange, and it wasn't until I became an adult that I realized that a lot of the attributes and the things and the issues that I had when I was younger, there was a name for it, there was a reason for it. But that's pretty much it.
Well, if since we're kind of at this point, what are some of the things that, if I can ask, or something you can share, it's like kind of telltale signs that you yourself may be a living vampire?
Well, I first noticed, I believe when I was about 8 or 9 years old. I was a baby with colic. A lot of babies have that nowadays. I was a very, very weak child. No matter how much I ate or anything, I just never seemed to have the energy that I needed, the life force that I needed. I was always very sickly. And for whatever reason, the doctors could never figure out what it was because of the fact that I was very healthy in all other aspects. Um, and I know this sounds probably kind of taboo and kind of strange, but I was 14 years old, and of course, being a goth child that I was very obsessed with Queen of the Damned, Underworld, all those movies. And my boyfriend at the time thought it would be funny for us to exchange blood vows in a way. It's a childhood thing. I don't know. It's like, children who cut themselves and, put their hands together and say that, we are blood sisters now. We kind of wanted that connection, and we thought it was very romantic being a 14-year-old. Um, but, we went through the process and cut ourselves. And I will say one thing, that the moment that his blood has touched my tongue, did not, I felt more alive than I ever have in my entire existence. And I think it was from that moment that I realized that nothing that any doctor could ever do for me um, would sustain me. I needed something else. And so at that point is when I started to do my research.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know even well, I'm sure I'm a little bit older than you. Um, Growing up in the '70s and stuff, you would have, well, you saw it in popular culture. Hey, let's be blood brothers. A lot of times you'd see that in like the cowboys and Indian movies and stuff. And these guys would cut their hands and they say, okay, we're bonded now. We have a
Hmm.
spiritual connection. And I mean, if you look at religion, you look at there's always been that recurring theme of sharing sharing blood to a point. Drink of this cup, it's my blood. Um,
Hmm.
Symbolic or not, it's still representing blood. And a lot of times, I
You
think for
give a
people,
part to
go ahead.
someone.
You
You
what?
give a part to someone, basically.
Yeah. Well, and it does seem that that's kind of been a recurring element in a lot of faith and a lot of different cultures, and it is very much a communal kind of come on, back and forth. It takes a village to give each other energy, I guess. But so, was it the physical act of supping the blood, or is it the energy that's within the blood, or within the act or the ritual that does it?
I, at the moment, I can honestly say that I I was not thinking about the act quite as much because, I wish I did, being who I am now and being an adult, because you definitely do not want to just randomly take blood from any person. You need to make sure that they're properly screened, and but we can get into that later. um it was more of the feeling. You literally can feel someone's life force, someone's energy entering into your body through the blood. um and now being an adult and being partially a sanguinary vampire, which is a blood drinker, it's beautiful. It's like the feeling that I get is as if I'm watching a wedding, a love, unfold in front of you. It's just, it's hard to explain. I've had people who have said that, it's like eating the best chocolate. Not necessarily. I don't really prefer the taste of it. It's it's more of the feeling that it gives me. Kind of like going all day at work without a cigarette, and you finally have your cigarette, and you get that fix, and you just feel perfect. That's pretty much how the feeling is to me, anyway.
Well, I'm sure that there's a well, I do like chocolate, but the thing of
I do as well.
well, you know what I mean. There's that thing where there's sort of I guess an endorphin release that would occur in that time. I guess it would be
It is.
similar with your situation.
It is. It's the same as drinking a Red Bull when you're exhausted, or your first cup of coffee in the morning, or like I said, your first cigarette of the day. It's just that thing that gives you the little push that you need. Um, Now, there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to vampires due to movies and media and such and folklore. Um, we do not sit around and drink a whole glass of blood. That's not necessary. Just a little prick of the finger is enough to, I mean, to me, it's enough to last me for a month or more. I've gone a lot longer without that. So I've gone several months without it. Um, it's not a complete gory and disturbing experience. It's rather enjoyable and it's rather safe too. There's a lot of people that just I think they just think it's kind of scary. I mean, I understand the act of drinking someone's blood. It could be terrifying, but it's just as simple as if you cut your finger and you stick it in your mouth. It's just instinct.
Right, and again, I think it's something really primal. I always kind of touch on weird things like that. I actually had a Mother's Day show, had a Mother's Day show, and I talked about the connections between things of like that mothers would say, or grandmothers, or even grandfathers, or whatever, would say, in cannibalism. Like you talk about like a little baby, oh, you're so sweet, I could just eat you up. You know,
Exactly. Yes.
there's way way back that come from somewhere, and I know there's very much that thing you working on something, hit your hand with a hammer or something, you stick your thumb in your mouth, and I've heard some people say, well, it's because your saliva has a sterilizing effect or something. Your mouth's filthy. Why would you put anything in your mouth? But
Yeah, not true. I don't believe
I,
that.
I think that's someone's attempt to keep it within bounds of their paradigm, of what they feel is the real world and what's safe. Well, let me ask you, after that happened, as a young person, did because obviously it's not like you just ran down the street and said, "Oh, well, hey, there's a group here or this and that." Did people seek you out? Did people? Was it one of these things like sometimes people that are different? I used to use the term "a freak knows a freak," and you can kind of read a person. Did people start going, "Okay, you're different now"? What happened? How did you begin kind of amassing a group of people?
Well, um, so I grew up in a relatively medium-sized farming town in the middle of Indiana, um, Kokomo, Indiana, actually. To anyone who might be listening who's from Indiana, um, it there was a small group of us that were, the goth kids in school. Um, I think that at that time, I don't really think that I changed too much. I think it was more of I knew deep down what I needed, what I was, but I wasn't quite aware of it. It's sort of an awakening, as you can, that term comes across a lot of folklore, a lot of movies as well. You awaken as a vampire, and you start to realize a lot of things about yourself. So I wouldn't say that I changed per se, but I did grow up very very quickly, and I think I hit my reason or my wisdom of adulthood at that point because um, it was definitely an eye opener for me to realize what I was. And as a vampire, you kind of look at life differently. You look at a human soul differently. You look at yourself differently, and but I don't think that I changed. I've had people tell me that I did, but I didn't see it in myself because naturally you are what you are your entire life. You cannot be made into a vampire. You're either born or you are not born as one. But I think you're a little bit more aware of yourself, if that makes any sense.
Okay, well, growing up and well, even still, I read a fair amount of Anne Rice, and there's always been there's an that crossing line, intersecting lines of the hunter and the prey, the draw, the allure, the repulsion, and the sort of the sexual dynamic in there, on top of everything else. And it's not all that, obviously, but it's very intimate. It's just sort of and this is from an outsider's view. I've never done it, but it's a thing of you. It's like you go through a certain thing, and you experience certain things, especially things that most people don't. And there's this thing of going, we're connected in a way other people are not going to get, and you know that can be true of
Exactly.
a well, that can be true of a discovering yourself sexually or a religious experience or whatever. And I'm sure maybe on whatever level you could kind of consider that a religious experience. So, how did once this happened? I mean, you were saying you were from a small little farming area, like I am. How did you, or did you, kind of share this with your family, or did they kind of get an idea? What happened? How did that, or has that ever even come to a head?
I'll be completely honest, when I was younger, I did not tell anyone. Um, I did not have that conversation with my family at all whatsoever. Um, it was, I wouldn't say it was an easy time of my life. It was pretty difficult because I really felt isolated in a way that um, I mean, being a goth child anyway, you're already isolated and people look at you very strangely. But um, I, when it came to my school and the people that I hung out with, I actually did not meet any other vampires because it's something, you can sniff out your own people, if that makes any sense. And I mean, you literally can. You can feel them, you can sense them, you can smell them. Um, you can be going into a Walmart and you can tell somebody that is exactly like you and what you are. I didn't find that into my adult years. So I spent a lot of time being very confused. I knew that they were out there. I've read a lot of things. I read a lot of books. Michelle Belanger is she her books are pretty much my bibles as growing up as a teenager because she writes about the modern vampires and but I actually did not find my people until I was 25, 25, and I'm 30 now. So and that wasn't until I moved to the state of Texas and found the Vampire Court of Austin. um, I didn't know that the community even was a thing, sadly enough. And there's a lot of us out there that do not know that there is a community. And the sole purpose of having courts, being leaders in the community, is to seek out those people, those, the lost, and find them again and give them a home and let them know that they're not alone. Because I can't explain how I don't want somebody to go through what I went through. It was a very, very lonely feeling knowing that you couldn't tell anybody what you were going through, the hunger that you felt, or just the pure loneliness. There's a lot of people, especially with the gay community or the transgender community, they understand that, and it's the exact same feeling. You're just isolated and there's nothing you can do about it, sadly.
Well, I know it's and that's very very indicative of a lot of communities. Everybody thinks of this sort of, I don't want to say this sort of thing like it's like oh, it's over in this corner and it's negative. I'm just saying, but a lot of times people in a very small rural area, here we are, we got farming, this and that. My mom wants me in FFA, this and that, and people don't even, that's not even on the radar for a lot of people. That's not to say that, that's not a thing here to a point, but it's just not, like you said, it's not broached. It's like it doesn't exist. And like you said, so you are marginalized and you are already feeling
Hmm.
disjointed from what's going on around you, but then it's just amplified due to the fact that it's like it doesn't exist. Um, you were talking about Michelle. Are you familiar with Eric Venner? He's also a very large writer. Does a lot with
Yes.
does a lot with Satanic Church. I actually had him on. Good Lord, let me think. 15 or 20 episodes back, and he was a really sweet guy, and we touched on vampire lore and things like that a little bit, and we were talking because again I grew up during the time of like a lot of the '70s stuff and Salem's Lot and all that, so obviously that affected my view of what I thought a vampire was. You know, it was they weren't sparkling then. You know, they were still very much the undead vampire. You know,
Yes,
or whatever. You know, the concept of psychic
yes,
vampires hadn't really even. I mean, if it was touched on, it wasn't in popular culture. And we were just talking about how
yes,
it's
exactly.
slowly changing. You know, I was gonna joke because I joke about everything. You were talking about giving these people a place where they're safe and they're accepted. And I said you're sort of like the Professor X of the vampire community. You know, you want to bring these people in that feel this is, you know what I'm saying? I mean it with all due respect, because I grew up in those
Yes,
comics. But there's a thing. There's a natural thing. It's you can call it mothering or fathering, whatever you want to call it, whatever you identify with. But there's something about you see someone, maybe it's a certain amount of narcissism. I'm sure I'm guilty of it too. You see, it's like, well, that kid kind of reminds me of me. I need to help that kid because I don't want them to have the nightmares that I had coming up. And but it comes from a place of love and concern. But okay, so once you started making, well, go ahead if you want to say something.
Well, it's funny that you bring up the term of mothering because we do um our term for it is to have a sire in the community. A sire is someone that if you if you read Anne Rice, if you read a lot of books, it is your maker of the maker of the vampire. This person made you a vampire. Um, in in some terms that is true. Um, my sire, he is actually the Prince of Augusta, Georgia, and I didn't meet him until about 2 years ago. And a sire in the community is basically someone that takes on the responsibility of yourself. You become that person's child, and they are your teacher, not necessarily your maker, but they are your mentor. They take you under their wing and they teach you everything that they know. Them being an elder in the community, and you know, it is a family situation. I am a sire myself. I have 3 children that I took under my wing, who were newly awakened. Not necessarily too new, but they needed a lot of guidance, and they came to me and asked me to be their mother, and that's kind of how it happens. And sometimes you make it known to the community that these are your children, this is my child, so that way everyone knows that those people are under your protection. So if anything was to happen, then they come to you. um, Kind of like the same of a house or a clan. If you're a part of a house or a clan within the community, then they know who you're associated with, and if anything bad happens, then they know where to go to, or who they should answer to in some sense. But yes, go ahead.
Right. Well, I mean, and it also sort of provides a certain amount of well, kind of like, okay, who sent this guy? I mean, so there are conditions and there are consequences for if there are situations where people have maybe didn't particularly act in the right capacity or did something out of turn and whatnot. Um, Let me ask you this: we touched a little bit on popular culture and we talked about underworld and all this and that, which this is again jokingly. Why do all vampires know karate? Why do vampires know karate, and how are they such good shots?
I personally don't know karate. I am skilled in a lot of other things, knife fighting and archery, and I don't honestly, I don't know. Maybe it's just a hobby or something that we like it to make us seem stronger. I don't know. I mean, we do consider ourselves the top of the food chain regardless. Um, but I honestly I can't answer that question because I don't know, but a lot of my friends, everyone that I do know who are vampires, do know some sort of self defense in some way, shape, or form. That's actually kind of funny to think about because I never thought of it. It was just, something that came natural to me, so I never really thought of it that way.
Well, I think any creature in whatever capacity needs protective skills. Um, you know,
I
I'm
agree.
well. I mean, I'm kind of a Second Amendment guy, to the point of if you feel you need that and you're being responsible with it and you want to protect your home, that's fine. If you want to go out and shoot up a place, not so good. You don't need to do that. But let me
Exactly, yes.
let me ask you this. Since we were touching a little bit on popular culture, stuff like True Blood and things like that. You see so many different things. It's
Hmm.
like, well, you can't go out during this time of day, and this certain things are dangerous or repels you because not because like anybody. It's like, well, you stick a wooden stake in a vampire's heart, it's going to kill them, and you're like, yeah, and everybody else. I mean, are there certain
Yeah,
things without
exactly.
without giving up, your kind of Achilles heel? Is there certain things like, well, yes, we do have a tendency to be weak during what this and that time, or we tend not to use this type of material, food or mineral or something because of something that's reactive.
So I really think it depends on the person. Sunlight, daylight, it is one of the things that does affect us. Um, not we won't set on fire or anything like that, but it can with prolonged exposure from being outside, especially when it's really hot and you live in the south like I do.
Right.
Um, uh, we can get headaches, migraines, nausea, pretty much anything that a normal person can get from heat stroke, but amplify that times 100. Um, I have a job that requires me to be out in all times of the day. So, just like any person in normal society, we don't all always have the choice to sleep all day and get up and work at night. So we kind of have to adapt, and we have adapted, over the years to being able to cope with those things. Food wise, no, I've never experienced anything that has ever affected me when it comes to food. Um, I I do have a sensitivity to very loud noises, very high pitched noises. But this is because of a different topic. There's not only vampires, there are vampire hybrids. There are people who all identify as a vampire or a wolf at the same time, or there is a whole separate community within the community that are people who identify as vampire and fae. I am someone that identifies as both vampire and fae. Fae, not as in a normal fairy-like creature, but I am succubus. So, but succubus is a whole other separate, was what we call dark fae, in all other terms. And we are sensitive to high-pitched noises in certain metals. Um, it's kind of annoying trying to go to a concert and your ears are ringing to a point where you feel like you want to gouge your eyes out, but we deal with it.
Well, see, that was actually leading into another question. A lot of folks will catch something on like Discovery Channel or History Channel, which there was a show, and I can't
Mhm.
think of the name of it. It had your friend Michelle on it, and they were talking about that there's vampire clans and they were like werewolf clans, or people that connected more to wolf culture and whatnot. Which, see, that's the thing. I would probably be more to that. I'm just not. I don't think I have the grace to pull off being a vampire. At least not a very sophisticated. Maybe a more. I don't know. Maybe a little bit more feral vampire or something like that. But do you guys, because I'm sitting there going, yes, tell me there's a war, tell me there's a war. No, but do you guys go between each other? Is there sort of like neutral ground? Is it sort of like a Highlander spot? Like, well, okay, there's no fighting here, or is it just like we're just people and we do our own thing?
um it's kind of a regional question. There are a lot of the elders in the community, some of the people who follow the older paths of vampirism that believe that our kind does not mix with the what we call the other kin. The other kin are wolves, fae, um, people who are feline, or I have even met people who identify as a bear, or their spiritual side is a horse. Um, all of that goes into a grouping that we call the other kin. Um, I personally, me and my court, we do not mind. I have members of my court who are Fae. I have members of my court who do not identify as anything other than um, something along the lines of a witch or a warlock. I have wolves in my court. I welcome everyone. I believe that we are, even though we are different cultures within the same culture, we I mean, I think we pretty much function around the same way. We have the same issues that vampires do, or fae, or anything like that. The Vampire Court of Austin, actually, a lot of my teachings I got for starting my court came from them, and um, they have other kin, they have everything, they welcome everybody, and I kind of derived my court around that. I have the same, um, I wouldn't say rules, but um, I allow everyone to join. So, and humans as well. There's people that we call the white swans or the black swans, and those are our quote unquote donors, our willing donors. So.
Okay, and how does that work? I mean, is it a thing that people seek out the situation, or without revealing too much personal information? Obviously, is it? I mean, I don't know. Part of me would think that would be kind of hard to get somebody to do that. But then again, I'm thinking no, it wouldn't be, because especially if you're part of the culture and you're really digging that whole kind of feeling, the whole vibe. Um, I would assume you would be having people knocking on your door all the time, going, "Hey, do you want some blood?" I mean, how does which is closer
I
to
mean,
reality?
I will admit that over the past couple of years since I came out of the coffin, so to speak, because I was one of those people that I did not tell anyone that I was a vampire until I went public. And um, I will be completely honest that I get messages in my inbox from Facebook every day from quote unquote willing donors. Um, However, it does not work that way. There's a whole screening process that needs to happen, and therefore that person needs to be local and close by to be able to do that whole process. But a lot of the times, the swans that join an organization, a clan, or a house, if that is allowed, because some houses don't allow humans to be, in the group, and that's fine. That's whatever they want to do. But some are significant others of vampires, who are donors to, their designated vampire, and then they allow themselves or take it upon themselves to become a donor for anyone within the clan or the house or the court or whatever. Um, and there's some people who literally are, like you said, just drawn to the subculture. And there is actually, from what I gather, I believe that there is an online platform where I'm not quite sure. I've never used it. I don't really care for that whole thing, but it's like an online website that swans can meet up with vampires, and it's kind of it's this sounds really funny, but it's kind of like a blood bank food, like Facebook kind of thing. They find each other, they meet up, and they come to an understanding, and that's how you find their donors. And it's funny because I've seen that in a lot of movies before, and it is true. They are out there, so it's kind of entertaining.
See, to me, that's kind of like the Craigslist of the vampiric world. You just don't know what you're going to get, and the fact that
That's exactly right.
you know, and yeah, see, that would be a deal breaker, because, like you said, you just don't know what you're going to get. Now, you being a living vampire, I'm assuming you're susceptible to pretty much anything that's bloodborne as anybody else would be.
Absolutely. That's why it is very, 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 very important if you are going to live the sanguinarian, be a sanguinarian vampire, is that you make sure that you are very, very picky with your donors, and not only that, but you make sure that they are fully screened. You attend the doctor's visits with them. You make sure that you're on the same page completely, and not only that, but you also practice safe feeding. You make sure that you have the right tools, which a lot of time are the same type of materials that you use for being a diabetic. Um,
Right.
I've seen a lot of people do it different ways, but make sure it's sterilized, et cetera, et cetera. You in in all other words, just make sure you're not stupid. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing. So
Okay, let me ask you a few more things because they're just firing off as you're talking. I'm like, oh, what about this? What about this? And I'm sorry if I'm jumping all over. Um,
there's no
two,
problem.
okay, two things. Now you talked about vampire, vampire fae, vampire this. Have you encountered a group or an individual that identified as something that was maybe particularly dark that you're just like, yeah, I'm out. I can't really deal with that. Or are there inner fighting in certain elements? Is there people that was like, well, we don't drink blood, we only draw energy, and we feel that those people are bad? Or the people says, no, you're drawing psychic energy. We're just taking a little bit of blood. You could really mess somebody up that way. Is there anything like that, or is it all pretty chill?
Oh no, absolutely not. It's definitely not chill in the vampire community. We do have a political system that is just like any other, anything in the United States or any other, whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't. There's some clans that are very, very much old school and the old ways, and the community is evolving just like any other, you know political anything or whatever. I mean, there's some people who don't believe that there is such thing as a court. There shouldn't be a court. It should be a house or a clan. And there's some courts that are feuding with each other. There's some places that are, I mean, I won't name any names, but there are some places that are literally fighting for a certain location. um, there are there is an organization that is outside of what we believe in, that are completely different group of vampires that absolutely hate all of us. It, I think it's just like with anything, anything that's political in general, government wise, there's always going to be feuds. Which is why there is something that's called the Unity Project that has been around for a couple years now, and this was originated, or thought of by the King of New Orleans, Maven, um, and then also the King of Austin, Logan. He, both of them together created the Unity Project in a way to kind of make a common ground for the vampires, so that way we can, in all other words, come together and break bread and find something to agree upon to be able to better the community. There's always going to be the people who are solitary or the people who don't agree with it, but at least try to bring people together from all regions, or at least one group, at if we can, to try to make peace within the community, or do what we can to try to make that happen. um, it's not always easy. There's a lot of backlash and stuff with the Unity Project, and we're all still working on it. But in a couple years, I really hope that we can, all be friends or whatever. There's a what is it? The movie Hotel Transylvania. When there's, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a kids show, and
Yeah.
there's the werewolves and the vampires sitting around the fire, and they're saying, vampires will be friends forever. It's kind of
Right.
like we're trying to do that, but it doesn't always happen. So
Yeah. See, I have a whole bunch of like kids, and I'm actually a granddad now, just this last month or so, and so I'm the kind of the werewolf guy with all the little cubs climbing on them and just yeah, that's me. I'm that or well, I don't know, that or the mummy because he's always cracking jokes and being stupid. But yeah, it would seem that you would have to have some sort of accord to a point. And are there like vampire clans that go back? I mean, and I know some people will claim like a very long heritage. You know, someone go, well, I was born in 1412, or I was this and that. Do you? Which maybe they were. I don't know. But do you? Is there any like premier groups that's like, okay, well, these guys were the first, or these guys are the oldest living, or whatever vampires? And to follow that up, is there a point where you go past being a living vampire into something else? Does it morph into something else, or because there's the undead, there's this, there's that. How does all that tie in together? And I'll let you kind of chew that up. I threw a bunch at you.
Um, there are a lot of clans that have been around for a very, very long time. There's the Gotham group that's in New York, and they've been around, I believe, since the 80s. The the only two that I can rightfully speak for are the ones that I'm a part of. I am a part of Clan O'Malley, or House O'Malley. They originated in New York as well, and they've been around, gosh, for forever. And they're actually one of the biggest houses in the community. They had like the most numbers of people who are a part of the clan. And aside from that, my very last name at the end of my title is Sahaja. And Sahaja is, um, they're actually pretty well known. You can Google them and they would come up. The matriarch of that group is Goddess Rosemary, and not only are they associated with vampires, but it's also a witch coven as well. They do a lot of teachings of witchcraft within a goddess oriented, or not necessarily just that. They teach a lot of different things as well. But Sahaja has been around since the 70s, and it's still strong today, and the numbers is overwhelming. For we stretch all the way to Brazil, and the European countries. Actually, our
Wow.
our family reunion was this year in Brazil. So, and we crowned the king and queen of Sahaja in Brazil as well. So, but those are pretty much the only two I can speak of, because they are who I am related to. So, um,
Wow.
but
You know,
yes.
no, I was just going to say, excuse me. It's it's sort of all right. This is sort of a weird question, so there's going to be at least one. Um, being that I do a lot with the paranormal and do paranormal research and write about this stuff, um, you always okay. You always see like okay, there's somebody who said they saw a UFO, but it's usually not the Oxford taught or the mayor of a community. It's usually kind of a backwater type, or it's someone who is either really over the top and maybe on something or having certain personal issues that gets on like on television, or the person that you hear about in the news. You don't hear about the coven or the clan who is doing Toys for Tots this year and did this and that, or a poker run to help raise money for a child with cancer or something like that. It's usually guys like Roderick Farrell, the guy. There was a guy here in Western Kentucky who actually went to Florida, and they were he was tied in with the kind of the mask like Vampire the Masquerade game back in the day, but they took it really far
Hmm.
and they ended up killing some people, and that was
I've
all.
heard of that.
Oh, it's so crazy because that's not 40 minutes for me. I actually bumped into those guys before at a restaurant there, like maybe a month before it all happened. And, they were gothy kids, it was like in the whole kind of Smashing Pumpkins time, so they were a little grungy ish too. And,
Hmm.
but I never would have thought that went down. How often do people come at you with, oh, okay, well, this is what I know about it, so I'm assuming, are you going to bite me, or are you this and that? How much of how much re-education do you have to do? Or you are at the point now going, look, guys, Google it. Just, do you feel like you have to go out of your way to, just kind of like someone saying the, gay, lesbian, transgender communities, do you sometimes just go, I don't want to have to educate every person I bump into, or do you say, well, no, I want you to know this because the next person you may encounter like me, you may bring whatever preconceptions to that in a negative way.
Um, I do find it very, very important to educate, um, I wouldn't say outsiders, but people who are not of the community, what we are about, and to make sure that they know, especially being in the Bible Belt. It is so, so difficult for a lot of us who are here to not only be ourselves, but to be open and honest. Like my employer, I was completely open and honest from the get go, up front, who I was, what I was, and not everybody can say that their employer or their families are fine with that, or their friends or anyone that they meet. And I do get a lot of questions, and I get questions every single day, and I do my best to try to meet um some type of standard to be able to educate them in a way, shape, or form. It does get tiring, and sometimes you can kind of weed out the good ones from the bad. Every once in a while, I get a random question, and I'll do my best to answer it. But then, of course, you get the stupid people who want to say something insulting, or after you answer the question, and then you can usually tell who those people are going to be, but so you can shut them down before it even happens. But um, my court in general is a fully incorporated 501c nonprofit organization. We are not only the Vampire Court of the Live Oak, but we are the Vampire Court of the Live Oak charity organization. We do a lot of things within the community, not only with us, but there is a vampire community a court, the Dark River Region Court, which is in Montgomery, and then there is the Magnolia Court that is in Augusta. And we work in tangent together. We're kind of close by to each other. We do a lot of charity stuff, food drives. We worked with, I can't remember what the name of it was, but we did a toy drive for the police department in Montgomery this year. My court specifically, since Thanksgiving is next week, we adopted 5 families in the area and bought dinner and had them delivered to them. And we do a lot of things like that. We've done the cancer walks. We've done the walk for autism that was in October. So the awareness of who we are and what we are, we try to make it as positive as possible. It being the Bible Belt, you have to be kind of careful. You do get a lot of evil comments and really bad things, and but we do our best. That's the whole point of it, is to give a positive light of the vampire community, so people don't think that we are freaks. I mean, we are kind of freaky. I mean, that's just just what we are.
I mean, everyone on some level is freaky, and and if not, God, you're boring. I mean, who wants to be
Yeah.
normal? I was talking to somebody just. I actually did a podcast on someone else's show earlier today, and someone had commented about, I think it was something about the South, and I just commented back more or less that, and I was like, about it. I was like, well, what's normal about the South? I was like, well, first of all, who wants to be normal? Good Lord, why would you want to be like everybody else? What's it in the end? What do you get? You're trying so hard to be like someone else who more than likely don't know you exist. Just be you. I tried to play normal when I was a kid. It doesn't work. I'm sure you've seen those memes where somebody's like flapping their arms around. And it's like me, when they tell me to act normal, or like you're at a party and it's like be normal, and it's like 5 minutes into it, I'm giving way too much information about serial killers. That's me. So, everyone has their quirk or their fetish or their whatever, their interest, and that's okay as long as you're not hurting somebody, and you know
I
I
mean, speaking of fetish, a lot of us are actually very, very, very much involved in the BDSM community. So that's a whole other kind of level of freak that you can go off into.
right, and and there's that element in a lot of cultures. Not, I'm sure, not just yours, but I think the fact that you kind of embrace the, and I'm quoting this, but it just may not be one of your pillars of whatever. To kind of do what thou wilt, you know, seek out pleasure, enjoy yourself, and be true to yourself. I've seen a lot of people who's lived lives where they just were trying so hard to be what they thought or what somebody expected them to be, and they had miserable lives, and
And
you know,
that's kind of a Luciferian mindset. Is to
mm-hmm,
do as you will, and to enjoy life, and I'm a firm believer in that too. It's just harm none, and make yourself happy.
right,
So.
and well, and honestly, I think most people have that element. I mean, being a parent, I mean, you're going to make sacrifices because sometimes it's you have to worry about the little person who needs diapers, and sometimes you have to sell off your band equipment, or you have to sell off whatever, uh, make your sewing room into whatever, a kid's room. But I'm at the age now where I'm not that I'm being selfish, but I'm just more about myself a little bit. I'm obviously involved with my kids, but I'm like, I'm at the age now. Hopefully I've got another 20, 30 good years, but I want to go see the things I want to go see. I want to explore some of the places I want to go explore and have the life experiences that I want, because if not, that's sad. If you're capable of doing it and you can have a great experience out there, why not do it? You know, if more people embrace that, I think overall we'd be happier. I think there'd be less fighting. I think a lot of people try to hold yourselves to a standard that's really not obtainable. And
Hmm.
I don't mean just go hog wild and like purge the place, but something that's not going to hurt somebody.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm done preaching.
Yes. Yep. I'm definitely right there with you in that belief system. So.
Well, well, let me ask you this too. Since we were touched on religion a little bit, are there like vampire churches where you hold like whatever sort of prayer or remembrance of or something, or is that more kind of what the vampire court is for?
um, I don't. If there is, I don't know of them. I know that a couple times a week, Sahaja gets together, and um, we do ritual, but not everyone who is in Sahaja are vampires. So it's more of a um, pagan ritual kind of thing. Um, Holding court, we do have a meeting that happens once or twice a month, along with events and stuff. We get together and kind of discuss day to day goings, and we also do workshops and different things like that. Uh, like things like safe blood feeding or safe energy feeding, or tantric feeding, however way you want to do it, along with different religious things as well, because we do have a lot of people who practice witchcraft, and anyone who's interested in learning that, those classes are available to you. We have history and lore classes that we hold as well within my court. I don't know if anyone else does that, but in my court, we find it very important to teach the history of the vampire community to our newcomers, and just anyone in general, so that way everybody's on the same page. But uh, church or religious wise, I don't believe so, but I haven't seen it. I mean, it's possible.
Well, I mean, if you look at the kind of classic, what do you call it, definition of church, if you've got two or three people speaking about this and that, or of a sort of a singular mindset of this and that, it's sort of a church. I've heard people sitting and talking about sports. Three or four got three or four guys on a bench back and forth. That's they're holding church or holding court is what I used to hear my dad used to say when people were sitting there just talking back and forth. And I think it's kind of all the same. I think it's what your intent is and what your enjoyment is and what you put your energies toward. And it's interesting because I really didn't know what I was learning from you, because I've noticed some people that identify with vampire lifestyle, werewolf lifestyle, Satanism, Muslim faith, all kinds of different stuff. I've talked to people who are involved with exorcisms. I'm kind of a weird guy, but what I found more often than not is that generally we're the same. Generally we want the same outcome. We're not wanting to hurt anybody. We're wanting to be able to do what we want to do, be accepted, and if not, just get out of our way and let us do what we need to do. So I'm honored that you've let me kind of learn some stuff from you. It's been fun.
And that's kind of how it was always for me as well. Now, I grew up with kind of a mixed background. My father, this might sound really funny and probably kind of generic, but being who I am, but my father was actually from Romania. He born and raised there, didn't speak very much English, and he lived till I was probably about 11. But his side of the family practiced witchcraft in the sense that it was gypsy magic, Romanian and Italian gypsy magic, and that I grew up with that. But I also grew up Baptist as well. So I kind of got the best of both worlds, and not only that, but as I was getting older, my grandmother and my mother, in acceptance to this, because she, bless her heart, she tried to, not push Christianity on me, but tried to lean me towards that. And I was just a really curious kid, knowing what I knew from both sides of my families. And my grandmother took it upon herself to teach me every religion that she had knowledge of. So I not only read the Bible, I read the Quran, I read the Satanic Bible, any kind of Druid and heathenism, pagan, books that you can come across, Buddhism. I grew up learning it all simply because they wanted me to, at one point in time, if I ever had questions or anything, I so to speak, I would have my free will to choose whatever path I wanted, whatever I thought was right for me. And not only that, but I grew up with a lot of respect for other people, and simply because I knew where they were coming from, I knew their background, and I understood their belief systems, and I'm very, very grateful for that too, especially nowadays.
Well, the fact that they try to embrace you and not kind of taboo your thing. You can either try to work with a child or a young person, or you can be so stringent and you'll push them away. I think it was a very smart move on your parents and grandparents' part. But Emily, we're at the point now. I'm going to start my fade out music, and if you'll stick around in a second, I'll speak to you off air for a second. But I do want to thank you for having you on. It's been real fun.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And everybody, make sure to go to steveeasher.com and find out about different stuff, from everything from the books to House of Asher, which you can listen to House of Asher on YouTube under Conflict Radio. You can also go to the Spreaker app where you can download it, and look me up on Facebook to find out about book signings and whatnot. But I want you to go out there and enjoy the rest of the day. But as the shadows grow long and darkness comes, make sure to check under your bed, check your closet. You never know what's there. But until next time, don't be afraid to be a little scared. Love each other, love yourselves. Take care, everybody.